93% of people who start a self-improvement routine quit before the second week. Not the second month, the second week. And the ones who make it past that? Most of them are running on pure willpower, white-knuckling their way through a system that was never designed to last. So here's the uncomfortable question nobody wants to sit with. What if discipline isn't about grinding harder? What if the people who actually transform their lives in 30 days aren't the ones with the most motivation, but the ones who understood something about human behavior that the rest of the world completely ignores? The thumbnail says, "Only 30 days." And yeah, that sounds like every other clickbait promise on the internet. But here's the thing about 30 days. It's not a magic number. It's a psychological runway. It's the minimum amount of time your brain needs to stop treating a new behavior like a threat and start treating it like a default. Neuroscientists at University College London found that habit formation takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days, depending on the behavior. But the critical window, the part where your brain decides whether this new pattern is worth keeping or worth sabotaging, that happens almost entirely in the first month. Miss that window, and you're starting from zero every single time. So this isn't a 30-day punishment. It's a 30-day negotiation with your own nervous system. And you're about to learn exactly how to win it. This isn't a challenge about suffering through 30 days of cold showers and kale smoothies. This is a system. A sequence of behavioral shifts, stacked in a specific order, designed to rewire the way your brain processes effort, discomfort, and reward. And the order matters more than any individual habit on this list. Get the sequence wrong, and you'll burn out by day 9 like everyone else. Get it right, and something clicks that's genuinely hard to explain until you've felt it. Every phase builds on the one before it, like floors in a building. Try to skip to the penthouse, and you'll find there's nothing underneath you. Let's start where nobody wants to start. Sleep. Not because it's exciting, not because it makes for a great montage, but because every single thing that comes after this falls apart without it. Days 1 through 5 are about one thing only: fixing your wake-up time. Not your bedtime, your wake-up time. There's an important distinction here, and most people get it completely backwards. They try to force themselves to go to bed at 10 o'clock when their body has been conditioned to stay up until 1 in the morning, and then they lay there for 3 hours staring at the ceiling, building resentment toward the entire concept of self-improvement. That's not discipline. That's self-sabotage dressed up as ambition. Here's how it actually works. Pick a wake-up time, the same time every single day, including weekends. 6 in the morning works for most people, but the exact number matters less than the consistency. Set one alarm. Not 3, not 5 with cute little labels like "Seriously, get up this time." One alarm. Place the phone across the room so you physically have to stand up to turn it off. And when that alarm goes off, your feet hit the floor. No negotiation, no snooze, no just 5 more minutes. Your feet hit the floor. That's the entire instruction for the first 5 days. Nothing else changes. You eat the same food, you work the same hours, you watch the same shows at night. The only non-negotiable is that alarm. Sounds almost too simple, right? But the research on sleep consistency is staggering. A study published in the journal Sleep found that irregular sleep patterns increase the risk of metabolic problems by nearly 30%, independent of how many total hours a person slept. Your body doesn't just care about quantity, it cares about predictability. When you wake up at the same time every day, your cortisol rhythm starts to synchronize, your melatonin production adjusts naturally, and within about 4 or 5 days, you'll notice something strange. You'll start getting tired earlier in the evening without trying. Your bedtime fixes itself. The body wants regularity. It's been screaming for it. You just haven't been listening because every night your phone was offering something more interesting than sleep. Experienced sleep researchers have been saying this for decades, but it never makes it into the wellness content because set one alarm and wake up consistently doesn't sell supplements or 12-week courses. If your body has been asking for consistency and you're finally ready to listen, the KMA method shows you how to build real discipline in just 5 minutes a day, but access it today before it disappears. Link in the pinned comment. But this is where most people would expect the routine to ramp up immediately. Day 6, add a killer workout. Day 7, start journaling. Day 8, meditate for an hour. Day 9, eat clean. Wrong. That's the shotgun approach, and it fails for a very specific neurological reason that almost nobody talks about. Every new behavior you introduce costs what psychologists call executive function. Think of it like a battery. You wake up with a full charge, and every decision you make, every moment of self-control, every new habit you have to consciously remember, it drains that battery a little more. Stack too many new behaviors at once, and you'll be running on empty by lunchtime. That's when the old patterns come rushing back like water finding the lowest point. Not because you're weak, because your brain literally ran out of fuel for change. The research on cognitive load has been consistent across hundreds of studies. Willpower is a depletable resource, and the people who seem to have the most of it aren't the ones who started with a bigger tank. They're the ones who learned to spend it strategically. So days 6 through 10 introduce exactly one new element: movement. Not a workout plan, not a gym membership, not a body transformation program. Movement. 15 minutes of deliberate physical activity within the first hour of waking up. That could be push-ups in your bedroom, a walk around the block, a bodyweight circuit you found for free online, stretching on your living room floor. The specific exercise is almost irrelevant at this stage. What matters is that you're linking physical effort to the window right after your anchor habit of waking up at a fixed time. Behavioral scientists call this habit stacking, attaching a new behavior to an existing one, so the first behavior becomes an automatic trigger for the second. Wake up, feet on floor, move your body. The chain starts building itself. And 15 minutes is deliberately, almost frustratingly short, because the goal here isn't fitness, not yet. The goal is proving to your brain that effort can follow rest without a 45-minute negotiation period in between. There's also something happening chemically that's worth understanding. Morning movement, even just 15 minutes of moderate activity, increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is essentially fertilizer for new neural connections. It also triggers a norepinephrine release that sharpens focus for the next 2 to 4 hours. One guy who runs a cognitive performance lab described it as giving your brain a software update first thing in the morning. The people who move early don't just feel more alert. Their brains are literally more capable of learning, adapting, and making good decisions for the entire first half of the day. You're not just building a habit, you're upgrading your operating system. And here's what happens that nobody warns you about. Around day 7 or 8, you're going to feel incredible. Like genuinely, surprisingly good. This is the honeymoon phase, and it's one of the most dangerous parts of any behavior change program. Your brain is flooding you with dopamine because you're doing something new, and it registers as progress. You're going to want to add more: a stricter diet, a longer workout, cold plunges at dawn. You're going to think, I'm different from those other people. I can handle more than the plan says. Do not listen to that voice. That voice has destroyed more 30-day challenges than laziness ever has. The honeymoon phase is a neurological trap because the crash that follows is directly proportional to the high that preceded it. Pile on too much during the high, and the crash becomes unsurvivable. Veterans of behavior change know this pattern intimately. They've learned to treat the feeling of invincibility not as a signal to accelerate, but as a signal to hold the line and trust the process. Days 11 through 15. This is where the real architecture of transformation gets built, and it starts with something that doesn't look like a discipline habit at all. You introduce structured input control. Not a digital detox, not deleting social media, not throwing your phone in a river. Those are dramatic gestures that generate great content but rarely survive contact with real life. Instead, you implement one rule. No phone for the first 60 minutes after waking up and the last 30 minutes before sleep. That's it. Nothing else about your phone usage changes, just those two windows. Here's why those specific windows matter so disproportionately to everything else. During those times, your brain is in its most suggestible, most programmable state. The first hour after waking, your brain is transitioning from theta waves to alpha waves. It's essentially still in a semi-hypnotic state where incoming information bypasses your critical thinking filters and goes straight into your subconscious processing. When you grab your phone first thing in the morning, you're handing the agenda for your entire day to whatever algorithm has the most engaging notification waiting for you. You're outsourcing your priorities to a machine that profits from your distraction and your anxiety. And the 30 minutes before bed? That's when your brain is consolidating the day's experiences and deciding what to move into long-term memory. Fill that window with comparison traps, outrage bait, and artificial urgency, and guess what your subconscious marinates in all night long while you're sleeping. Cut that cord for 90 minutes total per day, 60 in the morning, 30 at night, and you reclaim something that's genuinely hard to put a dollar value on: the ability to decide what matters to you before the rest of the world tells you what should. A former tech executive who helped design some of those engagement systems once described the first hour of phone use each morning as pouring someone else's agenda into the most absorbent version of your brain. That phrase stuck around because it's viscerally, almost physically, accurate. The morning brain is a sponge, and right now, most people are soaking it in anxiety, comparison metrics, and manufactured urgency before they've even brushed their teeth. Pretty clever business model for the apps. Terrible business model for your actual life. Now here's the thing about the first 15 days as a whole. They look deceptively easy on paper. Wake up at the same time, move for 15 minutes, don't touch your phone for an hour. Any reasonable person would look at that list and think, that's your big transformation? That's the challenge that's supposed to change everything? And this reaction, this instinct to dismiss simple actions as insufficient, reveals exactly why most people fail at discipline permanently. They confuse dramatic action with effective action. They want the routine that looks impressive on a vision board, not the one that actually rewires neural pathways. The person who wakes up at the same time for 15 straight days without a single exception has built more genuine, transferable discipline than the person who did 200 push-ups on day 1, ran 5 miles on day 2, overhauled their entire diet on day 3, and was back on the couch by day 4, scrolling motivational quotes about the grind. That's the irony nobody in the self-improvement space wants to accept. Discipline isn't a feeling. It's not a surge of energy, it's a pattern. And patterns are built with boring, unsexy, completely unglamorous repetition that nobody will ever applaud you for. Days 16 through 20 are where you earn the right to add real intellectual complexity. Your sleep rhythm is locked in. Your movement habit is becoming automatic, something your body expects rather than something your mind has to force. Your mornings belong to you instead of your phone. Now you introduce the practice that, more than anything else on this list, separates people who change for a few weeks from people who change for the rest of their lives: structured reflection. 10 minutes, once per day, with a pen and paper. Not a phone, not a laptop, not a notes app. A physical pen on physical paper. And before anyone dismisses that as romanticized old-school nonsense, the research on handwriting versus typing for cognitive processing is surprisingly definitive. A study from the University of Tokyo found that writing by hand activated significantly more brain regions associated with memory encoding and conceptual thinking than typing the identical information. The physical act of forming letters with your hand creates a deeper neural imprint than tapping a glass screen. Your brain literally processes the information through different, more durable pathways. But here's the critical part that makes this completely different from regular journaling. You're not writing stream of consciousness diary entries about your feelings. You're not making gratitude lists. You're answering two specific questions every single day, and only these two questions. Question 1. What did I do today that moved me closer to who I want to become? Question 2. What did I avoid today, and why did I avoid it? That second question is where the real transformation lives. It's where people consistently report the biggest breakthroughs, because avoidance is the native language your subconscious uses to communicate fear. It's how your deeper mind signals what it's terrified of without you ever having to consciously acknowledge the fear exists. When you write down that you avoided making that sales call, or avoided that difficult conversation with your partner, or avoided opening that business plan you've been meaning to start for 2 years, and then you force yourself to honestly articulate the real reason, you start to see patterns you were completely blind to while they were quietly running your life from behind the curtain. Most people who do this consistently for even 5 or 6 days discover something that changes how they see themselves. Roughly 80% of their avoidance behavior traces back to 2 or 3 core fears they've been running from for years, sometimes decades. Fear of rejection, fear of being exposed as inadequate, fear of actually succeeding and then having to maintain it, fear of conflict and disappointing people. Seeing those patterns on paper, written in your own handwriting, documented by your own observations over multiple days, is a fundamentally different experience than vaguely thinking about your problems while you're in the shower. It becomes undeniable evidence. You can't unsee your own patterns once they're staring back at you in ink across 5 consecutive pages. And this is where things get genuinely interesting. Because once you can see your own avoidance patterns in real time, something shifts in how you move through each day. You start catching yourself in the act. You'll be about to close the laptop, about to reach for your phone instead of working, about to postpone that difficult task for the 4th time this week. And you'll hear your own voice from that morning's reflection page saying clearly, I avoided this yesterday because I'm afraid of what happens if I actually try and it doesn't work. And in that sudden, sharp moment of self-awareness, you have something you genuinely did not have before. A real choice. Before the reflection practice, avoidance was invisible. It wore costumes. It dressed up as laziness or bad timing, or not feeling inspired, or I'll do it tomorrow when I'm in a better headspace, or any of the dozen convincing excuses your brain manufactures to keep you in the safe zone. Now, the avoidance has a name and a documented cause, and here's what military psychologists and combat trainers have understood for generations. Something that has a name can be confronted directly. Something invisible controls you without you ever knowing it. Days 21 through 25. By now, your behavioral foundation is genuinely solid enough to support something heavier without cracking. This is when you introduce deliberate discomfort. And no, this is not about cold showers or ice baths. Those have their place, but they've become so synonymous with discipline culture online that they've almost completely lost their original meaning. They've become performance art, something you do for the content and the bragging rights, rather than for the actual neurological benefit. The discomfort practice here is more targeted, more personal, and frankly much more difficult. Every single day, identify the one thing you're most actively resisting on your task list and do that thing first. Before anything else. Before the easy wins that make you feel productive without actually moving the needle. Before the busy work, before the inbox maintenance, before the administrative tasks that let you check boxes and feel accomplished, while the thing that actually matters sits untouched in the corner, getting dustier by the day. The thing you're resisting goes first. Always first. No exceptions. An organizational psychologist who spent over a decade studying peak performers across industries ranging from surgery to investment banking to professional athletics found that the single strongest predictor of sustained, long-term career advancement wasn't raw intelligence, educational pedigree, professional network size, or even interpersonal skills. It was the consistent willingness to engage with uncomfortable tasks rather than defer them to a more convenient time that never actually arrives. He called it discomfort tolerance, and it functioned almost exactly like a muscle. The more you deliberately exercised it through small, daily confrontations with the thing you least wanted to do, the stronger it became. And the stronger it became, the more opportunities became visible and accessible that remained permanently invisible to people who habitually chose the path of least friction. The gap between people who build extraordinary lives and people who don't is rarely about talent or circumstance. It's about the accumulated weight of 10,000 small decisions to do the harder thing when the easier thing was right there, available, comfortable, and perfectly reasonable. Simple compounding, really. Choose discomfort once, the advantage is negligible. Choose it every day for a year, and the compound effect becomes almost impossible for anyone else to replicate. This is where the stacking becomes genuinely powerful, and where you start to see exactly why the sequence mattered so much from the beginning. Your morning phone-free window gives you space, clarity, and the cognitive resources to think clearly. Your reflection practice has already told you, in your own handwriting, exactly what you've been avoiding and precisely why you've been avoiding it. And now your discomfort practice forces you to confront that specific, documented fear before the day offers you 100 easier, more comfortable alternatives to hide behind. The three habits work together like interlocking components in an engine, each one amplifying the output of the others exponentially. More any single element and the whole thing weakens noticeably, immediately. But together, they create a self-reinforcing feedback loop that accelerates personal transformation in a way that isolated habits, no matter how impressive they look individually, simply cannot match. That's the difference between a random collection of good habits and an integrated system. A collection can be picked apart by a single bad week. A system reinforces itself precisely when things get difficult. Days 26 through 28 add the final structural element, and it's the one people resist more than anything else on this list because it forces you to look at your life with uncomfortable honesty. Environmental architecture. Discipline practiced in perfect isolation has a hard ceiling that most people hit without ever understanding why they stalled. At some point, your environment either supports the trajectory you're building, or it quietly, persistently, almost invisibly pulls you back toward your previous default. And most environments are designed, whether intentionally or accidentally, to maintain whatever status quo existed before you decided to change. During these 3 days, you take an honest, no-excuses inventory of every major input in your life. Not just screen time, everything. The 5 people you spend the most hours with each week, the content you consume during your downtime, the conversations you participate in most regularly, and the emotional direction those conversations typically flow. The physical spaces you occupy, and how those spaces make you feel when you're in them. You don't need to dramatically cut anyone out of your life or make sweeping declarations about having outgrown your friends. That's usually ego wearing a growth mindset costume. You just need to become genuinely, uncomfortably aware of the directional force each input exerts on your behavior and your sense of identity. Think of it like a current in a deep river. You can be an exceptional swimmer with perfect technique, enormous stamina, and ironclad motivation. But if the current is flowing against you at every moment of every day, you'll exhaust yourself just maintaining your position, and you'll mistake that exhaustion for evidence that you're fundamentally not trying hard enough or that you're somehow broken. Most people never examine the current itself. They assume their environment is a neutral backdrop, a passive stage on which their personal choices play out independently. It almost never is. Every relationship, every media source, every physical space you regularly inhabit carries a directional pull, either toward the version of you that's emerging through this process, or back toward the comfortable, familiar version that existed before day one. If you're beginning to see the current that's been quietly pulling you off course, don't ignore that awareness. The KMA method helps you realign your habits and identity in just 5 minutes a day, but it's only available for a short time, so act now before it's gone. Once you start noticing these currents honestly, you can make small, strategic adjustments that compound dramatically over weeks and months. Sit next to the colleague who challenges your thinking rather than the one who validates your complaints. Unsubscribe from the newsletter that consistently triggers inadequacy or anxiety. Rearrange your physical living space so the tools connected to your goals are more visible and accessible than the tools connected to your distractions. Put the running shoes by the door instead of buried in the closet. Leave the book open on the nightstand instead of the remote control on the pillow. These aren't dramatic, shareable transformations. They're quiet, environmental edits that nobody will ever notice or congratulate you for. And they matter far more than most people will ever realize, because they operate on your behavior continuously, around the clock, including during the inevitable moments when your willpower is completely spent and your executive function battery is dead. When active discipline fails, and it will fail sometimes because you're not a machine, you're a person, your environment either catches you or it doesn't. And that depends entirely on the design work you did during these 3 days. Days 29 and 30. The final phase isn't about adding anything new to the stack. It's about solidifying what you've built and making a decision with clear eyes that will determine whether this month was a temporary blip or a genuine turning point in the story of your life. These last 2 days are for comprehensive review and honest commitment. You go back through every page of reflection notes from the past 28 days. You read the avoidance patterns you documented, the fears you named openly for the first time, the uncomfortable tasks you confronted head-on instead of deferring to some mythical tomorrow. And you sit with one question that matters more than every other question combined. What version of this routine am I genuinely willing to maintain for the next 90 days? Not what version sounds impressive, not what version would make a good social media post. What version will you actually, realistically execute when the excitement is gone and nobody is counting? This question is crucial because it forces radical honesty at the exact moment when most people start inflating their commitments. The 30-day structure was designed as a proof of concept, a demonstration project for your own skeptical brain. It was built to show you, through undeniable accumulated evidence written in your own hand, that you are capable of consistency, voluntary discomfort, and genuine self-awareness. But the version of this system that actually reshapes your life permanently is the one you can sustain when the novelty has completely worn off, when nobody is watching or caring, when the weather is terrible and your mood is worse, and the old comfortable patterns are whispering persuasively that one day off won't matter, that you've earned a break, that you can always restart on Monday. Maybe you keep every element exactly as it is. Maybe you discover that the reflection practice was the single most transformative piece and you want to build your entire next phase around expanding it. Maybe the morning movement became so essential to your sense of self that you're ready to evolve it into a serious, structured training program. The specific answer genuinely matters less than the honesty and self-knowledge behind it. Because sustainable transformation is built on self-knowledge, and you just spent 30 consecutive days generating more honest self-knowledge than most people accumulate in a full year of comfortable, unexamined autopilot. Here's the thing nobody tells you about discipline challenges, the thing that every person who's actually completed one and changed permanently knows but rarely articulates. The goal was never to complete the 30 days. Completion is a side effect, a byproduct. The real goal, the thing that actually bends the trajectory of a life, was to build a relationship with discomfort that isn't adversarial. Most people on this planet treat discomfort as a stop signal, a warning light telling them to retreat, to find a smoother path, to optimize for ease. After this month, you'll have systematically trained your nervous system to treat discomfort as an attention signal instead, to lean in rather than pull away, to get curious rather than defensive. That's not a small lifestyle adjustment. That's a fundamental rewiring of the operating system that governs how you navigate every challenge, every opportunity, every crossroads decision you'll encounter for the rest of your life. The person who walked into day 1 of this challenge and the person standing at day 30 are not separated by 30 days of white-knuckled suffering. They're separated by 30 days of quietly accumulated evidence. Evidence that you can wake up when you committed to waking up, even when you desperately didn't want to. Evidence that you can move your body when every comfortable instinct says stay still. Evidence that you can protect your own attention from a world that has invested billions of dollars in engineering systems specifically designed to capture and monetize it. Evidence that you can look at your own fears in writing and walk toward them instead of away. Evidence that you can choose the harder path deliberately and consistently when every algorithm, every default setting, every path of least resistance is engineered to pull you toward comfort. That accumulated evidence doesn't expire on day 31. It doesn't reset. It becomes the bedrock foundation for everything you build next. The people who actually change permanently, not for a month, not for a motivated season, but for the rest of their lives. They all describe the same quiet phenomenon. A moment, somewhere around the end of the 3rd week or the beginning of the 4th, where the effort stops registering as effort and starts registering as identity. You're not a person struggling to wake up early anymore. You're simply a person who wakes up early. That's just who you are now. You're not forcing yourself to confront the uncomfortable task first. You're someone who handles hard things before easy things because that's how you operate. The external behavior looks the same, but the internal narrative shifted completely. And that quiet, almost invisible identity-level change is worth more than any amount of temporary motivation, any productivity system, any guru's morning routine you watched on a podcast at 2 in the morning. Because motivation is weather. It changes hourly. Identity is climate. It defines what grows. 30 days, same wake-up time, no exceptions. 15 minutes of deliberate movement before the world gets a vote. 60 minutes of phone-free morning where your thoughts are actually yours. 10 minutes of painfully honest, written reflection. 1 avoided task confronted before everything else, every single day. An unflinching audit of the people, content, and spaces shaping your behavior around the clock. That's the complete system. It fits on a single index card. It costs absolutely nothing. It requires no equipment, no subscription, no accountability partner, no perfect circumstances, no ideal starting point. It requires only the one thing that nobody can give you and nobody can take from you. The decision to show up tomorrow the same way you showed up today, and to keep making that decision when it stops being exciting and starts being a choice. The question was never whether 30 days can change everything. The neuroscience confirms it can. The behavioral psychology confirms it can. Every person who's walked this exact path and come out different on the other side confirms it can. The only question left is whether you're willing to find out what exists on the other side of the version of yourself that keeps quitting when the novelty fades. Because that other version, the one who stays when it gets repetitive, the one who executes when the inspiration dies, the one who doesn't need to feel motivated to do the work anyway, that version of you is already in there. It's been there the whole time, fully formed, just waiting for 30 days of undeniable evidence to finally step forward and take over.